My name is Claire Holloway, and for 8 months, my entire world was the size of a 2014 sedan. I'm 34 years old, an age where you're supposed to be hitting your stride, maybe looking at mortgages or worrying about a promotion. Instead, I spent my nights adjusting a thin, scratchy blanket in a Walmart parking lot, trying to ignore the way my father's texts made my phone glow like a judge's gavel in the dark. "Come home," he'd write. "Apologize, and maybe I'll stop." It was a rainy Tuesday when the world finally shifted. I was in a motel room that cost $42 a night, money I didn't really have. The room smelled of industrial bleach and that damp, sour scent of a carpet that has never truly been dry. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, the springs groaning under me, eating saltine crackers out of a sleeve. That was dinner. I had $12 to last until Friday, and every bite of those dry crackers felt like a reminder of how far I had fallen. My phone was face down on the laminate nightstand. I couldn't look at it anymore. I knew the rhythm of his cruelty by heart. He didn't call. Calls could be recorded, or his voice might betray his anger. No, he liked texts. They looked calmer. They looked like concern, if anyone else ever saw them. "You've made this hard on yourself," the last message read. "Come home. Apologize, and maybe I'll tell people the truth." The truth. That was his favorite weapon. In my father's mouth, a lie repeated often enough became a fact. He was telling everyone, employers, neighbors, or own relatives, that I had a criminal record, that I was unstable, that I had stolen from the family business. He never said it the same way twice. He was too smart for that. He'd just drop a hint, a concerned warning, and then leave the room before anyone could ask for proof. He poisoned the air and let me choke on it. I remember Paula. She was the office manager at the first job I lost, a dental clinic. For 3 weeks, I felt human again. I had a desk, a swivel chair, and a name tag. I was learning billing codes. I was looking at health insurance forms, thinking that in 90 days, I might be able to afford a doctor's visit for the persistent cough I'd developed from sleeping in the cold. Then came the afternoon the air changed. Paula called me into her office. She wouldn't look at me. She was folding her hands over and over, her eyes fixed on a stapler on her desk. That's how people do it. They destroy your life with politeness. "Claire," she whispered, "someone called with concerns." I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't have to ask who. I knew the shadow that followed me. "They said there may have been legal issues in your past." I actually laughed. It wasn't because it was funny. It was because the absurdity was the only thing keeping me from screaming. "Paula, I don't have a record. You ran a background check. You know I'm clean." "I know," she said, finally looking up, her eyes full of a pity that felt like a slap. "But where there's smoke, Claire, and in this business, we can't afford smoke. Until this is cleared up, I don't think this is the right fit." The right fit. As if my life was a shoe that just didn't quite click. After that, it was a landslide. A bookstore, a bakery, a payroll assistant job where the hiring manager just stopped. The silence of an unreturned email is its own kind of violence. I could feel the smiles cooling in real time during interviews. I could hear the pause on the phone when they looked up my references. One night, at exactly 11:17 p.m., my father sent the text that confirmed my nightmare. "You can keep pretending you don't need us," it said, "but nobody hires trouble forever." The next day, I called my mother. Some desperate, childish part of me still thought she might be the emergency exit. She picked up on the fourth ring. I could hear the television in the background, some cooking show, peaceful and domestic, the sound of a life that used to be mine. Mom, I said, my voice cracking. Is Dad contacting my jobs? Is he telling people I'm a criminal? The silence on the other end was long. It was heavy. Then that soft exhale, the one she used whenever she was about to translate my father's cruelty into something reasonable. Claire, your father is hurt, she said. Hurt enough to make me homeless? Mom, I'm sleeping in my car. I'm eating crackers for dinner. You know he doesn't mean it like that, she replied, her voice as smooth as silk. How does he mean it then? She didn't answer. That was her greatest talent, making the truth feel rude just by refusing to acknowledge it. If you would just come home and stop being stubborn, she finally said. This could all calm down. We could be a family again. There it was. The price of peace wasn't justice. It was submission. A knock at the door startled me. It wasn't the aggressive bang of a bill collector or the soft tap of a maid. It was 3 slow, deliberate raps. I looked at the clock. It was nearly 9 p.m. I stood up, gripping a heavy glass ashtray, the only weapon I had. I looked through the peephole. A woman stood there. She was wearing a navy blue trench coat, her hair pulled back into a tight, professional bun. She held a leather portfolio and a small black metal box. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom, not a $42 a night motel. I opened the door just a crack. Can I help you? Claire Holloway? She asked. Her voice was like gravel over velvet. Professional. Calm. Who wants to know? My name is Judith Dane. I'm a private investigator. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. She simply stepped into the frame of the door. Your grandmother, Eleanor, hired me 10 years ago. She gave me very specific instructions on when to find you. I froze. Grandma Eleanor. She had been in an assisted living facility for over a year. My father had cut off my access to her months ago, claiming she was too confused to see me. Judith set the black box down on the small, cigarette-burned table. She told me that your father was a man who loved power more than people. She said that one day he would try to bury you alive. And she told me that when that happened, I was to give you this. She pushed the box toward me. There are things in here, Claire. Proof of phone calls, bank records, and a key to a property your father doesn't know exists. Judith looked me dead in the eye. The storm is over. It's time to start the fire. The drive to the coordinates Judith gave me took 4 hours. I watched the city lights fade in my rearview mirror, replaced by the towering, silent sentinels of the pine forest. The property was a small stone and timber cabin, tucked away near a lake that wasn't on most maps. As the key turned in the lock, the air inside didn't smell like bleach or rot. It smelled like cedar, old books, and faintly, the perfume Grandma Eleanor used to wear. This wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary she had built in secret, knowing her son's greed would one day leave me with nowhere to go. I sat at the heavy oak dining table and opened the black box. Inside was a leather-bound ledger. It wasn't just a diary. It was a record of every phone call Judith had tracked. My father's voice was transcribed in black and white. She's unstable, he'd told the bookstore owner. We're looking into filing for a conservatorship, he'd lied to the bank. But it was the second envelope that stopped my heart. It contained a series of checks, signed by my mother, funneling money from Grandma's accounts into Emily's personal fun fund. They weren't just discarding me. They were draining the woman who had built everything, all while I was starving in a sedan. I didn't cry this time. The tears had dried up weeks ago in that Walmart parking lot. What I felt now was a cold, white-hot focus. My father thought he had buried me. He didn't realize I was the only one who knew where the bodies were hidden.
I didn't call. I didn't text. I simply drove to the family estate on a Sunday morning, knowing they'd be having their perfect family brunch. The look on my father's face when I walked into the dining room was worth every night I spent in the cold. He looked at me, haggard, wearing a thrift store coat, but standing tall. And his first instinct wasn't love. It was damage control. "Claire," he said, stood up and smoothing his silk tie. "You're making a scene. If you've come to apologize, we can talk in the study." "I'm not here to apologize, Dad," I said. My voice was steady, cutting through the clinking of silverware. "I'm here to give you a choice." I laid the ledger on the table, right next to his plate of Eggs Benedict. My mother's face went pale. She recognized the handwriting. Emily tried to reach for it, but I caught her wrist. "Don't," I whispered. "You've taken enough." My father scoffed, his face reddening. "You think some old woman's ramblings are going to scare me? I built this town. I am this town." "You built it on Grandma's money," I replied. "And I have the bank records showing exactly how you've been managing her estate while she's locked away in that facility. I also have the recordings of your calls to my employers. It's called tortious interference, Dad. It's a felony. And Judith Dane is waiting at the police station with the originals." The silence that followed was absolute. For the first time in 34 years, I saw the mask slip. The pillar of the community was gone. In his place was a small, terrified man who realized his shadow had finally run out of room. The fallout wasn't an explosion. It was a slow, quiet crumbling. My father didn't go to jail. Grandma wouldn't have wanted that. But he was forced to sign over the hardware store and the estate to a trust that he could no longer touch. My mother and Emily were cut off, forced to live on a modest allowance that required them to actually work. I didn't stay to watch them fall. I moved into the cabin by the lake. I used the funds Grandma had set aside for me to start a small consultancy, helping others navigate the kind of corporate and personal sabotage I had survived. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the hum of the old AC unit from the motel. I still remember the taste of those dry crackers. I don't keep them in the house, but I keep the memory of them. They remind me that the truth isn't just something you tell. It's something you survive. I went to see Grandma yesterday. She didn't recognize me at first, but when I held her hand, she smiled. "You stayed," she whispered. "I stayed, Grandma," I told her, "and I found the key." The sun is setting over the lake now. The water is still, like a mirror. For the first time in my life, when I look at my reflection, I don't see a trouble. I don't see a failure. I see Claire Holloway. And I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. Family isn't always a bloodline. Sometimes it's a battlefield. Claire chose to fight for her truth, even when it meant losing everything she thought she knew. What would you have done? Would you have taken the quiet payout to keep the peace? Or would you have burned the bridge to see the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, give it a like, and make sure you're subscribed for more tales of resilience and justice. Until next time, keep your eyes on the light.